Director Balboni,
Present.
Director Jaffe,
Here.
Director Christensen,
Here.
Vice President LeHue,
Here.
and President Lather. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, now it's on. So now we are at, I've got all these examples now. So we're at the point for public comment.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, not yet. I think this one's confusing. Agenda adjustments.
Right.
This is a place for the board to elect to combine agenda items, consider items out of order, remove agenda items, or request discussion on consent items, or delay discussion on agenda items. Is there any requests for this from the board?
Not me.
Not for me.
Tom?
Not for me either.
Okay, so we can move on to public comment. Sorry about that. Now you can get up again. Public comment is an opportunity for public members to speak on matters within the jurisdiction of the district, but not on the agenda. You have up to 3 minutes. You need to turn it on also.
There we are. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Becky Steinberger, and I noted that tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock, the district will be participating in an partner agency presentation to the Capitola City Planning Commission. And I thought that was a very interesting request that the district responded to, along with the city, water department, and fire, Central Fire District. And I think the county sanitation district is going to be there. It is in response to the Planning Commission's concern about infrastructure and the future of being able to meet the needs of the very high RHNA, regional housing number allocation, that the state has imposed on the city. So that's tomorrow at 4 o'clock. It isn't very well described in the Planning Commission's agenda. It just says public hearing with partnering agencies. But I did happen to look into the staff report and see that Soquel Creek Water District is giving a presentation. So that's good news. Thank you for doing that. I also want to just point out to you that at the Santa Cruz City Water Advisory Commission meeting last night, there was discussion about reviewing their rates. And I know that your district is also looking at reviewing rates. So that was an interesting discussion. And finally, tomorrow also at 4 o'clock is the Santa Cruz County Water Advisory Commission meeting. And one of the issues that I'm hoping that body will discuss is the recent report
for that. Okay. Now we're on consent. This is an opportunity. There's an opportunity for the public to speak on any item on the consent agenda, but I mean, overall, not each item. Are you interested in speaking on the consent agenda? Okay. So now we can move it to okay. Comments and questions from the board. I think I can't do scripts. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so does the board have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Or do we have a motion to approve the agenda, the consent item?
I have a question on questions. If we were to get into any level of detail, we'd have to pull it from consent. Is that true?
Right. Oh, ask
Josh?
Josh, I'm not the attorney.
Yeah, that's correct. Simple questions, we can answer them, but if it turns into a discussion, we would request to be pulled from consent, please.
Okay.
I think if it's like a typo or something, that's okay.
I didn't have any questions. I just wanted to know what the procedure was.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Vice President Lehue,
Yes.
Director Balboni,
Yes.
Director Jaffe,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
and President Leather.
Yes. So next item is reports, and there are none. So we will move on to business items. The first item is 6.1, to approve a conditional will serve. And Taj is going to present this item.
Yeah, well, this is for a similar project that the board considered at another church. And this is a separate project, but a 10-unit low-income housing unit at a church in SoCal. So they'll be required to meter each unit and make any necessary improvements. We do have infrastructure in the area, so it's not looking like it would be any main extension required. So this is just up for a conditional will serve. It's off of Park Avenue, on the west side of Park Avenue on Cabrillo College Drive, near the Highway 1.
At this time, we'll open the floor to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing that there's not any, we can return it to the board for discussion.
So this is low-income housing, right? And these are small units. I'm just curious.
I don't know if the square footage of each one has been determined yet.
That's my understanding.
It does say low income, though.
It's a 10-unit low-income permanent supportive housing project that's going to be on church property.
Right.
They probably don't have a design yet.
I haven't seen one. The other one we looked at has a little more further developed.
Yeah, I think I've heard about this project. And this is just off Park Avenue, right before you hit the freeway, headed towards the ocean. Okay.
That's correct.
In the future, I think you usually do this. A map would be helpful. But
We can do that.
thank you. I don't have any. I'm very supportive of it.
Do we have any questions or comments from board members?
I have a question. It seems like it's a small one. I have a question about the Episcopal Church project too. I was wondering, do we have any apartments, apartment complexes in our district that don't have metered individual meters. I mean, it seems like that's kind of a, especially for apartments, it seems like there's no outdoor watering on that. I mean, why does it lend itself to just one major meter? I was just curious whether there was a way to bring down costs, but still keep cost of the project, but keep it, track of the water.
Yeah, I'm aware of another church housing project. The Shore Life Church has several apartments that are not individually metered. So but that's been in place for decades. And
yeah, I understand. But is it that hard to do the accounting? Just have the bill and that
it's on
whoever's managing that place give them a bill for their share, or is it that just?
I don't think they have. I don't know. I don't think they have individual meters or sub meters on that one. It's that Kennedy and Monterey.
And there, we did, trying to remember how long ago, probably before, Carla, you were on the board. Tom, you can help me out. We did approve a project with a master meter with sub-metering, and that was another low-income project, as I recall.
I know the Home Key, not actually across from Park Avenue, the 30 Home Key project.
No, this was quite a while ago. This was
long ago
in Seacliff, State Park Drive, near the park there. Yeah, so.
I was wondering if we're going to just agendize discussing that, because I know lots of people are griping about it, and but I was just thinking, it's like when you get up to 10 apartments, it's more like a complex. So I know even the mobile home parks, a lot of them don't have individual meters either.
I think as part of the issuance of a conditional will serve is for the developer to start working with our engineering department to talk a little bit more about the site plan and their needs, especially given if it's a development that includes landscape or irrigation. That would also typically, as Leslie had mentioned to me, would require, a meter and or backflow. So those are, I think, some of the discussions that would go forward. For this development, we would be agendizing this back if the development goes forward and we need to bring it back for an unconditional will serve.
Okay. Right.
And
well,
that's
thank
where
you.
we get the detailed
for
information.
Discussing it. I'm just
Carla, I'm with you. If there's not landscaping and it's low income and it's very small units, I'm amenable to not metering every unit.
Okay.
I still like individual metering, but we can bring it back.
Yeah, we should have that discussion, Tom.
Yeah, I'd like to. We can have a fuller discussion. So
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion and second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Vice President LaHue,
Yes.
Director Balboni,
Yes.
Director Jaffe,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
and President Lather.
Yes. So we'll move on to the next item, which is 6.2, consider adoption of the draft fiscal year 2025-26 budget, and Leslie Strom will be presenting.
So I first brought the budget to everyone.
I don't think it's on.
It's not? Or am I not? Okay, it's not close enough to me. I first brought the budget to everyone at the budget workshop in May, and we took a look at the budget schedules and discussed some of the items in the budget. Since that time, we have added just a few more items to the budget. Most of them are small dollar items. We did add, we had a request for a retired annuitant to fill in for a staff member in engineering that will be on leave for a period of time. So we have added $45,000 to the budget for that effort. We have added 2,400 for website accessibility. That would be ADA compliance. We have added another 4,600 for some AI training for government agencies. And those three combined resulted in an increase to our operating contingencies reserve because that is set at 40% of our operating expenses. So when our operating expenses go up, so does the need to hold more money in reserve. So we added another $20,000 to the operating contingency reserve as a result of these changes. Those are the only changes that have taken place in the budget since our May workshop. We did present the budget this time in a modified format. It is the schedules that you saw in May, plus the transmittal letter that gives kind of a broad overview of the budget itself. We will be putting the full budget document online in the new ClearGov application, and we hope to have that done by the end of June. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or consider any recommendations you might have to the budget. But if you are fine with these changes, then you can consider adopting the budget this evening.
Thank you. So at this time, we will open the floor to public comment on this item. Comments are limited to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Becky Steinbrenner. I still want to encourage your district to look at reducing your water rates for your customers. Already people are struggling out of the very high charges that they are now enduring. I really think that you need to examine the, I want to say legally defensible action that the district took in raising rates essentially to pay for Pure Water SoCal and basin sustainability. And Pure Water SoCal is not operational yet. So people are paying for a service that they are not receiving. They are paying money to restore the basin, but the project is not operational. And so it's not legally defensible that you're charging these people the rates that you are for a service that is not being provided. Again, I ask that you really look at your rates, look at trimming them and reducing them, because people are suffering. They really are. And with the cuts, attended the county budget hearing today. The cuts coming down the pike to a lot of people that depend on social services to help them through are going to be going away. And water is a basic human need. I ask you to really look at ways that you can reduce your rates for your customers and consider rolling back the fixed service charges so people can conserve and help pay their bill. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
Josh would like to speak.
Okay.
President Lather, can I briefly respond to the public comment?
Yes, please.
Just for members of the public who may be watching, regarding the legality of the district's current water rates, there was litigation related to those rates, and that litigation was resolved in favor of the district. So those rates are legal and were considered by the court. Thank you.
Okay. So we're closing the public comment part of the item, and now we will bring this to the board members for any questions or discussion. I always look at you because I figure you have something to say.
Something good or just something?
Something good.
Thanks. So at Aqua, had some conversations about the use of WIFIA and what qualifies for WIFIA. And it's a bigger topic than just these rates, but it plays into the rates. So I'd like to see at a future meeting just so I understand what can and cannot be charged to WIFIA. And just for my education, more about that and how, if there were charges, whether WIFIA is maximized as it is, or is there a way to use WIFIA to decrease our rates? So it's too much for this. I imagine that's too much for this meeting. If you want to respond, you can. But
Just in terms of the WIFIA funds and associated use of those funds, the way that we embarked in the loan agreement with the EPA is that the funds are for Pure Water SoCal. We did explore whether or not there was the opportunity to reallocate or make adjustments so that the funds could pay for other capital improvement projects, but that is not the case. If we are interested in utilizing WIFIA as a funding stream for other capital improvement projects, we can go ahead and apply for another letter of interest and apply for the WIFIA funds, but they have to be defined as what was included in that loan agreement.
so are we paying anything from other funds for Pure Water SoCal that could be charged to WIFIA and that money be used either to reduce rates by not using it or be used for some other thing like capital improvements? Is there any?
So WIFIA can't be reallocated to any other project other than
Understood.
Pure Water SoCal. And so we are using both the SWIC funds, we've maximized the seawater intrusion control funds, we've maximized the Title 16 grant funds. We are in the process of maximizing the Prop 1 grant funds from the state, and we anticipate fully utilizing the WIFIA funds as well.
So the question is, are we using any funds whatsoever that we're collecting from our ratepayers for Pure Water SoCal that could be instead WIFIA could pay for?
WIFIA is paying for a number of things associated with Pure Water SoCal, including like the cost of borrowing the interim line of credit from CoBank. Those interest costs are being covered by WIFIA, so our ratepayers are not having to pay those. So the majority of Pure Water SoCal is entirely borne by the loans and grants that we took out. There were some small pay-go items, but nothing hugely significant. One of the things we are looking at now is when that WIFIA loan is fully dispersed, we will have some money in reserve, but our issue becomes that we need operating revenue in order to maintain our debt coverage ratio. So we're looking at different ways that we might allocate those WIFIA funds that come to us and then become part of our reserve bucket. If there's ways to utilize those to improve our debt coverage ratio and improve our situation going into the next rate cycle.
Okay. And as part of that, could you look at scenarios where we charge less to our customers? Because in Prop 218, we've set the maximum we can charge.
Right.
We can always charge less if there's a way to do that.
The difficulty we run into is we need to meet our debt coverage ratio. That's the rub for us. It's not so much having adequate reserves. It's not so much having adequate funds set aside. What the issue is having annual operating revenues sufficient to meet that debt coverage ratio.
Okay. I just want to make sure that maybe the person was wrong, but
And
they were fairly certain that there could be a way that WIFIA funds could improve our situation.
Maybe they don't know how much we are already getting.
Maybe, I don't know. I just want to make sure that
Well, I definitely,
every rock needs to be turned over.
Yes.
and I,
And that's a big rock to turn
Yeah,
over.
we are looking at every option we have on the table before we go into the next rate cycle.
and we have continued to look to see if funds that were ineligible in other funding streams such as Prop 1 or SWIC or Title 16, if there were considered ineligible costs, we are looking to see if that's an eligible cost that could be reimbursed through WIFIA. That was one of the things related to some of the debt financing, was one that we are passing through to WIFIA. We did explore and we actually really did explore and try and talk. That's how we know at least the information related to non-pure water SoCal projects not being eligible under this loan agreement, and kind of the direction that we got related to if we did want to seek WIFIA funds, we could do that, but it would have to be outside of this loan agreement. And then I would just say that in terms of evaluations and considerations of the rate increases, the board has already directed staff to do a snapshot review of our water sales and a financial outlook in the fall, right before we go into the rate increase in January. So we did that last year. We'll do that again. And it gives everybody an understanding of where our financial projections are in terms of water sales, where we are with our finances, and then what we may need going forward.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to do that each fall.
Yeah, I think that was part of the idea, the whole idea. But why we changed the way we charged for water was because there was a sense of unfairness that some people were being subsidized by other customers, even slightly. And also we didn't have enough money. We weren't making budget. And we can't do that indefinitely. So
I think we're kind of moving away from what the subject is, which is the budget.
Yeah, but this is what the budget's all about. The budget, I feel like, is a very fair budget for what we're, for this coming year. So I applaud all the effort that Leslie and Ryan have done to keep costs down, look for money that, different ways so that we could lower rates, but we look at that, but it hasn't been able to come up yet. So
yeah,
I think it's really important, but it hasn't been possible to do that yet, to change that billing structure.
And the 218, when is the new rate structure going to come back on to our plates?
So we will likely be going out with an RFP for a new rate consultant in the spring of next year. Spring of 2026, we'll start doing an RFP.
So our 218 is good through when?
January 2027 is our last effective rate increase. If we want to have something available by 2028,
if we want to make adjustments, that's the time where it makes sense to do it.
Yeah.
The new rate structure. Okay, thanks. So I have a very trivial question. The 4,600 for government AI training. What's the thought on that? It's not a lot of money. I'm just curious because I'm very curious about AI.
So there's a government AI summit that's going to be coming in October. That is an opportunity for staff that are thinking about utilizing AI in their day-to-day, ChatGPT, spreadsheets, that type of thing, to learn more about this kind of evolving technology.
So it's a conference, or is
Yes.
And the expectation is by attending different talks in the conference that the educated.
Right. Maximize our use of it, but
Not
also
a lot of money.
learn about some of the cautions associated with AI. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so at this point, we're looking for a motion on the floor from a director regarding this item.
I'll move to approve, I guess, number one, motion to adopt the fiscal year 2025-26 draft budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I guess it's another roll call vote.
Vice President LaHue,
Yes.
Director Balboni,
Yes.
Director Jaffe,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
and President Lather.
Yes. Now we're on to the next item, which is 6.3, consider adoption of ordinance 25-01 and adoption of the cross-connection control policy. Taj?
All right. There's a lot of reading associated with this memo, so I'm going to do my best to summarize it for you. In December of 2023, the State Water Resources Board adopted a cross-connection control policy handbook, and it went into effect in July of 24, July 1st, 2024. And that policy handbook requires that the district and other public water systems, adopt a cross-connection control policy and plan that is in compliance with the new handbook. And so between then and now, we have put together a draft updated policy. The district has had a policy for decades. In fact, it was last looked at by the board in 2015. At that time, there was quite a bit of discussion about how to handle rain catchment systems. Some of you might remember that, and whether or not those required full backflow protection. We'll get to that in a little bit, but that was primarily a lot of changes that happened in 2015 at our level, and at that time the state, wasn't as active in their policy making. So there are two attachments. One of the cross-connection, the state's cross-connection control policy handbook requires that we also have the authority, and that's why before the board is Ordinance 2501, which has Section 8 in it that defines the authority for the district to implement this program. So there's a red line version of that ordinance for your review, pretty minor updates, but we can talk about those if anybody has questions related to the ordinance. I'm presuming that most of you understand what a cross-connection is, and it's defined on the first page of the memo, and I'm going to read it just for the sake of the public. A cross-connection is an interconnection between a potable water supply and a non-potable source via any actual or potential connection or structural arrangement between a public water system and any source or distribution system containing liquid, gas, or other substances not from an approved water supply. Even this includes water that we serve to our customers. We don't want that back. Once it goes into past our meter, we want to keep it on that side. Now, a traditional single-family home does not require a backflow device. However, in this new policy handbook, they are identifying residential fire sprinkler systems, which up until now have been considered a low hazard contaminant, and all of our residential fire systems have a double check valve. So, but it's not a testable device, and that's what the state is wanting to make sure, is that each year these devices are tested so that we're confident that cross connections are minimized. So that's a very significant effort and change. The state gave public water systems 10 years to come into compliance with that. In the memo, we define that this new requirement by the state is going to be a cost that will be incurred by the customers. The district will, of course, have to notify them and verify that they're installed and tested, and then each year we'll carry out the testing notifications. In addition to those fire sprinkler systems, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. On the second page is where there are 7 points that really highlight the changes to the policy. And they're also requiring that each one of our connections have a cross-connection survey performed. And so that's roughly 13,600 individual assessments. Now, those can be done a variety of different ways. Doesn't necessarily mean an on-site visit, but it does mean that the state's going to ask us, how are you confident that each one of your connections doesn't have an activity that is considered requiring a backflow device? So that's number one, the residential hazard assessments. Also in the mix for number two, and this is of course under the draft cross-connection policy, is that commercial connections need to have testable devices. And some of the older commercial fire sprinklers had underground check valves that are not testable, similar to our residential sprinkler systems. And those are going to need to be upgraded to be testable no later than July 1st, 2029. So there are a lot of deadlines in here, and I do want to, the plan also requires that we have outreach, and so that's listed in attachment 1, how we're going to attack that. Primarily, it'll be using our website, but also notices to any of our customers that are going to need to comply with the surveys. We talked about the devices that are not testable. It gave us 10 years for that. One thing that we did propose for the duration of the full system survey is that we would take 15 years to do that. At that time frame, it's about 900 surveys a year. It's what we think we can handle. We'll see if the state agrees that that's fast enough. It might be too far out in the future, and they may want us to do it quicker. If that's the case, we may need to come back to the board maybe next fiscal year to ask for some temporary support to do that if they want it expedited. The biggest point to discuss is the rain catchment tanks, and this.
Maybe just hit on number 6 since you're kind of giving an overview on all of them.
Sure. The sixth change is that we're proposing to remove pressure vacuum breakers as an acceptable device on our list. We've found that they are only good for back siphonage and not back pressure. And anytime there's a pump or a vertical elevation change for, say, a house on a hillside, that exerts back pressure on our meter. These pressure vacuum breakers are not testable, and so we're proposing to just remove them from our list and replace them with standard testable devices, RPs or double checks. For rain catchment tanks, that is something that the state has gone a little more in detail than in the past, and they are defining auxiliary water supplies may consist of an on-site well, private well, that's pretty obvious, fire storage tanks, surface water supplies, and they also include rainwater collection facilities. Gray water systems are also listed. So we're proposing in our draft policy to the state that's going to be submitted here shortly to kind of maintain status quo that the board wished to carry forth back in 2015 is that any rain catchment system that is 5,000 gallons or less will not require a backflow device. Now, we're not confident that the state's going to agree with us, so I just want to bring that to your attention that our intent is to kind of stay with what we're enforcing now and see how the state reacts to that. It's potentially that it is possible that the state will, tell us, no, we consider rain catchment, facilities as auxiliary water supplies. And that if that's the case, the customers that have cisterns, and they don't define, 50 gallons, 100 gallons, 1,000 gallons, they just blanket rainwater collection facilities. So
Our interest in proposing it, one, as Taj mentioned, it's to be status quo, but by setting that bar, at least to propose to the state, it doesn't require the individual homeowners to do the install and then the annual testing. If that
Okay, I guess we have to do public comment first, but I have questions.
yeah, no, I'm pretty much to the end of the memo and the highlights of the policy and where we stand. It's going to be an ongoing effort. What we do ask for is that when you do consider taking action on this, that you give us some authority to make changes that the state tells us are required, so we don't have to bring it back. We can bring it back once the state has approved it for your review if you want.
Okay, do we, now is the time for public comment on this item? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I remember that discussion about the rainwater tanks. It was a very interesting one at the time. And now the state's new requirements are pretty onerous. So I have had conversations with the owner of some of the commercial buildings in Aptos Village, and the cost of annual checks for the backflow devices was surprisingly high. I think it would be good if the board had some knowledge provided in staff presentation of the anticipated cost to customers, what it is now and what it could be in the future if you're expecting the customers to foot the bill for this. I would also ask that the district begin now in looking for grant fundings, sources to offset these costs. Unfunded state mandates are overwhelming, a lot of them. But I think that the state has to be made aware that people cannot continue to fund everything that they mandate, and that if these mandates are important, then they should be funded by the state. So I would request that your board send a letter of such to the state. And this is no small thing. I appreciate the attention to eliminating cross-contamination, but this requirement is onerous on districts like yours and others with large customer bases. Thank you.
Okay, I'll close the public part of this item and bring it to our directors for questions or comments. I have a question. Usually the president doesn't go first, though. Okay, so the catchment basins, are we talking about rain barrels that are just not even connected to the water system in any way?
No.
Well,
would they be connected?
They don't elaborate on that. The state does not. And we're proposing that that type of assessment be conducted by our staff cross-connection control specialist. And I think that's in line with the viewpoint of the board 10 years ago was, if it doesn't have a pump or it's not big enough to have it connected, or a makeup water, some of these, if it doesn't rain enough or they use it all up, they want a simple system to augment it with the drinking water system. And so when you get those kind of tricky plumbing things, then it becomes a concern where you could potentially have that tank be siphoned. So at this point,
There has to be a potential for it to be siphoned. So my rain barrels aren't going to be.
Not your individual rain barrels. If you ever participated, like when the counties and the cities were giving away rain barrels during the drought, these are either sometimes people will daisy chain a bunch of rain barrels in the past, or we've had like tanks that are, like Taj mentioned, 5,000 gallons or less.
yeah, they do list the potential connection. And so it is pretty broad. But at this stage, we're not proposing, to include rain barrels would fall under the 5,000 gallon threshold.
Yeah, I mean, even the underground tanks, though, if they're not connected in any way to the water system, they're just being pumped for landscape. Yeah, it doesn't make sense that they would even be part of this.
But what if you have a drip irrigation that sometimes is fed by the rain barrel or the tank, and sometimes is fed by...
Well, then there's a connection, but the people I know
I couldn't
don't.
quite hear Bruce.
Yeah, he's not talking to in his microphone. Say it
Oh,
again.
no, I'm right by my microphone. I'd have to eat this thing. So that what the concern is if you have a rain barrel or a tank, this is an example, that's feeding a drip irrigation system when there's water in it, and when there's not water in it, then it's being fed by the potable water from the district. Correct, Taj?
That's right. I think
Connected, yeah.
once the rains stop, you use up your the supply in your barrel. And after that, it's still the fall and you need to water. So you have to water it without your rain barrel. You're using something else. Maybe you're filling your rain barrel on a case basis. And, the definition of an auxiliary water supply will definitely come into, we're not the only water system
Oh, yeah.
that has rain catchment. So it is going to be a topic of discussion for the state regulators.
Yeah. It seems like the criteria should be whether it's got any possible connection with the potable water system versus not the size.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. And also, I mean, the people that I know that have that only use that water for landscape and don't have a connection. And if they have low water use landscape, so it's not. I mean, I know one person that said they have so much water they can share it with me and water my landscape.
Yeah, the one thing to note is in Appendix D of the state's cross-connection control policy handbook, which is technically law. It's been adopted. We have to comply with this. It states that there are 2, 8, and 9 in Appendix D, page D1. This says high hazard cross-connection control premises, sites with an auxiliary water supply that is interconnected with the public water system. The next one says sites with an auxiliary water supply not interconnected with the public water supply. So public water system.
Does that mean that they both are needed to be looked at?
They're both considered high hazards, meaning they need backflow. So at this point, we are not proposing that. We're going to wait to see how the state handles our request and our plan.
So can we back up a bit? What's driving this? Are there many cases where there's contamination to public water systems from backflows? Has there been recent cases where people have died or become sick because of this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Well, and it's the same with the gray water system. The gray water comes from your washing machine and would go in the public sewer, and they don't make you have a backflow prevention device for going into the sewer. So all you're doing is bypassing the sewer and using the water to water your gardens.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the driver was when this was approved. It kind of
I think it's
it did. And so we are, like many others in the state, because we've been having dialogue with local water agencies and then through the consultant that assisted with the engineering department in putting our draft revised policy together. I would say, though, that with the recent urban fires and the use and draw of a lot of water to protect fire, that does create a big suction into some of the services that could lead us come out. They didn't really explicitly say what the drivers were.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you knew.
Well, prior to this policy handbook that was December 2023, the state gave the districts a lot of leeway and authority, and they deferred to us a lot. And I don't know what now they have a very structured requirement, to follow these requirements. But to answer your question directly, no, I haven't heard of any incident, even one incident that I'm aware of.
Okay. I want to compliment the staff on a very well-written memo. I found it easy to follow, and was long, but it had to be. And the costs are significant, for $500 to over $2,000 for typical residential backflow. That's a lot of money. People are complaining about our rates. If they're hit with a $2,000 additional cost.
That's a one-time fee. That's not annually. That's to install it.
Still a lot of money.
And then annually, it's probably about, a little less than $100.
For the inspection.
Right.
That's a lot of money. And then for the commercial, in the memo, it says $15,000 to $20,000.
Those are usually larger in size, 4, 6, 8-inch devices.
I understand. So question I have, we're not the only district that's having to comply with this. Do you know how other districts are handling? Is it all, the cost is all being passed on to the customer? Or are there districts who have programs where they're doing the backflow?
At this stage, we are aware that the local agencies are passing the cost off to the customer.
Okay.
We are also aware that back to the cistern topic and the rain barrel topic, that Scotts Valley Water is proposing that even a rain barrel be backflowed. So I think the state regulators are going to be reviewing a lot of different plans.
And I would add that on the cross-connection control webpage from the state, they are providing some guidance documents. One of the guidance documents that we're waiting for, as well as a lot of other state agencies, is the one specific to fire protection. So item number 5 applies to, in our instance, which is the non-testable devices.
Mm-hmm.
They were supposed to issue some guidance to water agencies that was supposed to come out, what we had heard, early this year as we were starting to develop the new policy. And currently the website just says TBD, to be determined. So we don't know when that guidance document will actually be coming out. But we'd be looking at that and, talking to the state and talking to others on how that execution and implementation would be.
So even if we pass off these costs, we're the ones that have to check to see if it's been, things are being done according to the state's policy.
With
Yes.
and with these unfunded mandates, you either pass the cost to the customer who has the situation and is on their property, or you look at other alternatives, which would be to absorb the cost in your budget and spread those costs, which also have other implications. So,
It'll raise the rates.
Right.
or you seek and see if there's outside funding or other funding that's available.
I think it is a good idea to let the state know that this isn't trivial, although they probably do. And I think a short letter is appropriate. But I don't know. Josh, do we have to agendize it in another meeting?
Yes, please. We would need to agendize that as
I'd like to see that
Usually take the
agendized.
direction of prepare it.
Yeah, I would like to see that too. I remember vividly this discussion and and I think probably the state and what we came to is that people with water, they get really creative in using their catchment. It's rainwater, and that's they may be over regulating it because of they've seen many diverse catchment systems. So I was just, so I can see where they're coming from just based on that extensive review. When they first came on the board, I think it was that long ago, about this, our first discussion on this. But I think it's worth discussing the future about, agendizing this so we can send a letter to let them know that there's a lot going on in water for all of our customers throughout the state. And it just, this is another money thing. So one more question, which I think you partially answered it. Why the 15-year time frame? You thought that was as long as would be acceptable to the state?
Well, it's just a kind of, that's about 900 units a year, or 900 customers a year to process, among other tasks that our employee works on. It's probably what we could handle with the current staff that we have. If they want that expedited, then, it's a lot of surveys. We could, like I said, we could get that done with a mailer, and we actually were successful in that effort for the booster pump situation, which the board may not be aware of. Maybe customers contacted you, but the state, in a similar effort, but not through this policy, through an inspection of our whole system, asked us, hey, where are your customers that have booster pumps on there if they're low pressure, right? If they're high in elevation, and we found several customers that had booster pumps that did not have backflows, and they were almost done with that. I think we have a handful of customers that are still not backflowed that have pumps.
Okay.
Just imagine living next to someone that has a pump, and then they're pressurizing the system, and that water makes its way back to your house. You don't necessarily want to have backwash.
Okay, well, I think we've said enough.
Yeah.
Is there a motion? There are two recommended actions. One is to rescind the previous ordinance and adopt the presented ordinance. And
So I'll take a stab at it. By motion, adopt ordinance 2501 and rescind ordinance 2402. And by motion, adopt the revised draft cross-connection control policy and authorize staff to make minor changes based on direction given by the State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Drinking Water. And just a side note, I'd love for you to have the staff come back and report on the 5,000 gallon threshold.
So are you making the motion? Yeah. Okay.
That was it.
But anyway, we'll discuss that. Yeah. Usually you say I make the motion to do this. And
I said I'm taking a stab at it, so I thought that meant that.
okay. Is there a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. I could see your lips moving.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to adopt the recommended items. We have a roll call vote, please.
Vice President LaHue,
Yes.
Director Balboni,
Yes.
Director Jaffe,
Reluctantly, yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
and President Lather.
I'm also reluctant, yes.
Thank you. I want to also give a little, I want to credit Bryce Dahlmeyer, he's our associate engineer, and Doug Martin, our cross-connection control specialist who worked on this. Thank you.
Nice work on that.
Yeah, it was eye-opener. Okay, so now we're on the next item, which is adopt resolution 2512 awarding a contract to Betts Works Incorporated for Monterey Avenue Main Replacement Project. And this is also the Taj show.
The next two items are mine. The board might remember the last meeting we rejected a bid for this. This was this project. In the memo, it talks about that bid, the $640,000 to replace 280 lineal feet of pipe down here in Capitola Village. We rejected that bid. It was over our estimate, outside of our budget. And in lieu of that, we do have some on-call contractors that we reached out to, and Betts Works is one of them. And they were actually interested in bidding this project initially, but struggled to obtain a bond in time. And so they have secured a bond and provided us a very reasonable bid of $248,000, $880 as a lump sum to do this work. And so we're here to ask the board to adopt Resolution 2512, which would award the Monterey Avenue main replacement project to Betts Works and make some findings that it is in the best interest of the district ratepayers to do so and not necessarily go through the public bidding process. We did that, and it didn't provide us with an approach that was fair for our customers. So BBK helped draft the resolution for this, and that is our recommendation. We are shooting to get this started in September after Labor Day, per the City of Capitola's request.
Okay, so at this time, we have public comment.
Thank you. I'm always happy when a local contractor gets a bid, and they're a good company. I've worked with them on our road. What I want to make sure that is included is adequate traffic control. I have heard a lot of complaints about the project on Soquel Drive that has inadequate traffic control, and it's been very, very dangerous. And people could not get out of their driveways, and it was even friends of mine who are tow truck drivers were appalled by what they saw and did in fact call into the district to ask for improvements. So I hope that that will not be repeated with Betts. And the way to do that is to ensure that there is adequate traffic control budgeted in. Thank you.
Okay, close the public hearing part of this and return to the board for discussion. Now, the question, this is over by Britannia Arms? Okay, so
And it'll be
after the,
after Labor Day, and also the city encroachment staff will, enforce traffic plans, traffic control plans, and it's not far from their office.
yeah, that's, there's options, detours that are pretty easy for that spot, so I don't think they'll have the same issue as SoCal, which I agree was difficult. Carla, I saw you.
Quick question. I'm assuming, Taj, that you're happy with that contractor and previous work.
Yes.
I have the same question, Tom.
Was that your question too, Carla, or did you have something?
Oh, yes, but I do remember because I remember them. And so I don't feel as, I thought they were really good people. So, and it's over, and it just confirms how correct we were to, cancel that first bid process.
Oh, that was a ridiculous bid.
Yeah. It's good. I think it's good.
Yeah, thank you for doing
Well,
that.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
I'm
second
up here.
both motions.
Both motions 1 and 2, adopting the resolution and signing and the authorizing general manager to sign the purchase order.
I
I
second.
will second it.
I think I think Jaffe beat you to it, Carla.
Fine with me.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Vice President LaHue,
Aye.
Director Balboni,
Aye.
Director Jaffe,
Yes, and thank you for going out for bid again, or not for out for bid, but going to finding a different way to get this done less expensively.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
Been unanimous vote. Now we will go to item 6.5, authorized contract amendment to perform seawater intrusion prevention well rehabilitation.
Yeah. So our Pure Water SoCal seawater intrusion prevention wells are nearing readiness. And in doing so, we did some testing and discovered that one of the wells was not performing as it performed after the drilling. So these wells have been sitting through construction for a duration of time. And so with the guidance and advisement from Montgomery and Associates, our hydrogeologist, the proposal here for item 6.5 is to do some preemptive rehab work to 2 of the wells that are currently empty. There's no pumping equipment inside them, so they're accessible, and we wouldn't incur the cost to remove the pump and put it back in. The contractor has them already out for a different reason. And so the scope of work would be to go in and jet the screens and then come in with some development tools to basically clear out any clogging that may have occurred while they sat idle for several years, and then conduct some final pump tests on the wells when we're all done. It's about a 6-week effort, and with the current schedule, we'll still be on track to have the wells online in September for the Pure Water SoCal project. So the proposal is that Montgomery and Associates would be overseeing this and contracting the work. It's all work that has been described in the EIR. But we believe that because the wells sat, I don't think it was avoidable for this to happen because there's so many steps that have to occur between when they're drilled and equipped, the site civil improvements and PG&E and everything else. Having a rehab like this will give the wells the best chance of success going into the beginning of recharge.
That was a question I had. Can I ask a quick question, Rochelle?
I think we're supposed to do the public comment first. Is that
okay.
true?
All right. No worries.
Josh?
Yes, President Leader, that's generally the practice that we've followed.
Okay, so now that the presentation's done, we have time for public comment.
Thank you, Becky Steinbrenner. I have been just observing what's going on and noted some activities and lack of. What I want to ask is, isn't this the second time that the Twin Lakes Church injection well has been rehabilitated? I remember it was when Director Daniels was still on the board, and soon after, within a year after it seemed the Twin Lakes Church well had been drilled, that it had to be rehabilitated. Can you confirm that this is the second time that well is having to be rehabilitated? Maybe why, if that's so. I also want to know how this will be noticed to the people who live nearby the Monterey well. There are people in the apartments that you talked about earlier. There are people who live right next door or just on the other side of a fence. And that activity is disruptive to those who work from home. So how will they be noticed and accommodated during this work? Finally, in hearing that these problems are largely due to inactivity, it's too bad that there couldn't have been some aquifer storage recharge collaboration somehow with the city of Santa Cruz to actually use these wells using potable water when it was available, perhaps from the city of Santa Cruz. Anyway, thank you for the information.
Now that public comment has been completed, we can bring it to the board, and Tom, you get to go first.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Taj that kind of just a simple question, like this is the time.
It was an option that our consultants asked us if we wanted to include as part of the original SWIP equipping contract, and we declined to include it with optimism that we wouldn't need to do this. But I believe Montgomery Associates isn't surprised that this can happen to wells that sit idle for several years. So we're very hopeful. I mean, that the performance after drilling and development were very good. And so we anticipate this to not, it should be a success. It's not a futile attempt, I don't believe.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from board members?
Well, I had the same question, and I thank you for that, and thank you for your response.
You're welcome.
I'm just looking at you because sometimes I start to go forward and I miss that you needed to say something.
No, I think this is needed. It's very obvious. I'll make the motion unless somebody has other comments. Okay.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? So roll call vote, please.
Vice President LeHue,
Yes.
Director Balboni,
Aye.
Director Jaffe,
Yes.
Director Christensen,
Yes.
and President Lather.
Aye.
Thank you.
So we've completed that item. Now we're on 6.6, presenting the expansion of on-campus water education assemblies in Santa Cruz and SoCal Creek Water District. This is an informational item.
Yes, thank you. And I'll be presenting this on behalf of Becca Rubin, who is overseeing our Water Education Assembly program. As noted in the staff memo, we do have a short.
Can you reshare your screen with the presentation? It's not showing up on Zoom.
We do have a short presentation, basically highlighting, if you want to go to that first slide too when you're ready, that the Water Education Assembly program has been around for quite some time. Actually, since the 1980s is when we first began the youth outreach program, focusing on educating about good environmental stewardship, where water comes from, the water challenges, conservation, and most recently we've really talked about water supply resiliency, Pure Water SoCal, and talking about kind of one water concepts that go with the water cycle. Next slide. I wanted to at least just show you some photos of the performers that we currently have. We've been conducting the existing school assembly program through a rotation program of 4 different performers. 4 different performers allows for variety so that over the years, the students aren't getting the same performer. So we'll contract with one performer. They will do all of the assemblies for that school year, and then the next year we'll rotate. So the 4 that we've been working with are illustrated in these next slides. This one is Zun Zun. It's the husband and wife duo who really do a lot of music, dancing, interactive dialogue with students, and they teach a lot about the water cycle. They talk a lot about, specifically, they've crafted most recently one related to seawater intrusion and recycled water. Zun Zun also helped provide, last year we included some short videos that we included in social media, so they did even do one on the aquifer model that we have. The second one is Earthcapades. Earthcapades is also a duo, and they focus on a show called the H2O Show. That's what they brand it. Really including, as you can see, juggling. They do a lot of circus arts. They do storytelling, music, and comedy. They've been really doing a lot of our performances, and we also have some videos of them performing at schools. The third one is Banana Slug String Band. This is more folksy, more the music instrumentation, the type of music. It's a blend of folk, reggae, and even some rap, as you can see in that narrative. And the Banana Slug String Band also has performed at our water harvest festivals in the past. And then the last one is Rocksteady Juggling. This is actually a one-person show, really focusing on a lot of the juggling, but still the storytelling. One of the things that we do each year is we work with the performer, we create a curriculum. They will do all of the logistics of going out to the schools and scheduling, and then they produce a final report. So for this year, kind of what we wanted to present to the board is that there was interest by the city of Santa Cruz. They were interested in our outreach program, what we were doing, and how we were doing it. And we were started to discuss with them expanding the school education program and the school assemblies to also cover eligible schools within the city of Santa Cruz service area. Currently, the way that we provide our program is through schools within our service area. And then also we included at the last time, which was in 2019, to include Live Oak schools given that the Pure Water SoCal facility was located just outside of our district boundaries. So the proposed expansion going forward as we go out, we are going to be issuing a request for proposals for new performers who are interested in participating in this program, is to include more schools, and again, talk a little environmental stewardship, the One Water concept, and really about sustainable water use. It's great. These performers perform all over the world, as was mentioned in those slides, and specifically, they do like to tailor the content to be about the local region. I think on the next slide, this is just a listing of the schools that would be included in the current program, and the proposed expansion would include about 25 schools. How we are proposing to do the cost sharing with the city of Santa Cruz would be to continue to pay for the school assemblies within our services, except for the Live Oak area where we would split 50-50. And so with that, that's really just mostly an informational presentation at this time, but if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to answer.
Do we have public comment on this item?
Thank you, Becky Steinbruner. I can't help but think about Vi Campbell. I miss her. She was a gem. I have sat through County Board of Supervisor budget hearings today, and it's a grim thing to hear the cuts. But in that reality check, I think the district also needs to look at where you can cut. And this is one. How much does this cost? It is a wonderful program. I remember the district really ramped it up to sell Pure Water SoCal project to the public, to the schools. But is it really fair to your ratepayers to be paying? We don't know how much this costs to provide entertainment primarily with some knowledge, but at a time when you're looking at how to fund backflow prevention and your rate customers are having a hard time paying their bills, can you really justify this cost to your ratepayers? It's a harsh thing. But I've been hearing harsh things all day at the Board of Supervisor meetings, and it is time to look at really considering harsh things. And I think you should take a break from this expense for a year rather than expanding it. We're coming into some very, very difficult financial times. And I think you need to take a break and cut this cost. Thank you.
I have a question or a comment when I can't see who's
Okay, we've
wanting
ended
to speak.
public
But-
comment, and now it's your turn.
Okay, well, then I'll go ahead. Just as a former school teacher in both sixth grade and high school, and working with Vi and teaching my kids, and I think it's not just entertainment, it's education, and it gets kids excited about water, and then they take it home and teach their parents. And I think it really helps the overall awareness of our customers of what's going on when a kid goes home and teaches their parent about seawater intrusion. So I completely disagree with the public comment and support both the program and sharing it with Santa Cruz to help cover the Live Oak area. So good job.
Yeah, and quick comment from a parent who had their kids in the Aptos schools and still knows the lyrics to Dirt Ate My Lunch. Totally worth every penny. Thank you.
I'll just add too, I'm really glad to see the expanded list actually, because as we'll increasingly be aware, we're all in this together. And, I think it's a great idea to share. It will actually be more cost effective, I think, sharing the cost with Santa Cruz.
I don't know the lyrics to that song because I didn't have kids in these, but I'm sure it's a wonderful experience for the kids and educational, so I fully support it. For, sharing the costs with Santa Cruz because we have the purification center nearby for the Live Oak area. I'm lukewarm on that, but considering it's not a lot of money, I think I'm not going to oppose it. I think other costs with Santa Cruz, we have to look at our customers' gain and their customers' gain, and be very, very fair about how costs are shared with Santa Cruz. So I support it.
And I was just going to mention the fact that we're not really voting on this. It's just an informational item. It's been in the budget already, and I appreciate that. And thanks.
I was just commenting because public comment was against it.
How many customers do we have? Could you remind me?
40,000.
We serve about 14,500
14,000?
households, yeah. So,
Over 40,000 customers.
correct.
Well, the connections are the customers. The population is maybe 40,000. And so that's around $1 per year per
Just a little over $1 a year per household, yeah.
So I do not think it's going to make a big difference in our rates. Okay, well, thank you for that. I think it's great. I remember Zun Zun. I don't remember why, but I have seen them with my kids when they were little. So, at this time, we're going to close the public
We'll be
part of the meeting. And we're going to go into closed session.
so if you want to do public comment for
After public comment on closed session. Thank you.
Thank you. Becca Steinbrunner. I'm the litigant in one of the actions. And again, I want to say that I have tried multiple times to offer settlement negotiation. It was always refused by your district, saying it was too expensive. So that's always been a disappointment to me. And I also want to I don't know what council's going to tell you, but regarding the transferred case from San Luis Obispo, I've recently had to work very hard to disqualify a judge. The case was transferred from San Luis Obispo and assigned to Judge Cogliotti, who's a very fair judge and very well trained in CEQA law. And for reasons unknown and without notifying me, the case was transferred to Judge Connolly, who is not trained in CEQA and is not familiar at all with the case. And it has taken a lot of work to try to disqualify her, not because I don't think she's a good judge. I'm not saying that she would be partial in any way, but the fact is that she has not completed any CEQA training with the California Judicial Council. And that is a fact that I know because of Public Records Act request materials with the court. So I've had to work very hard to get a CEQA qualified judge, and hopefully it will be Judge Cogliotti. And so I want to explain that to you, how much I care about the fairness of all of this. And I'm still open for negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll close the public part of the meeting and go into closed session. Are we going to take a break?
That's your call.
I thought we usually need to change the...
I need like a minute to shut everything off, but
Okay.
not extensive.
Okay, then we will just wait that minute.